Ramesh Wadhwani, let me ask you, and you put out an editorial a few days ago, and the number one item on that editorial, it's a blueprint as far as creating jobs in the country, and the number one item on that agenda was an advisor on jobs that should be posted in the Prime Minister's office. We have a skills development ministry. Why do you want an advisor in the Prime Minister's office to look after the job plan?
The problem is because no one is comprehensively addressing the disconnect between jobs growth and economic growth. So as Ajay mentioned a few minutes ago, in a recent 7-year period, GDP growth was 56%, job growth was 3%. In a typical annual plan, looking forward, let's say the next annual plan, GDP growth planning might be 7 or 8%, job growth planning is non-existent. So my point was, in the meeting with the Prime Minister was, would it not be reasonable to have a plan that says, in addition to GDP growth of 7 to 8%, job growth would be, let's say, 5 to 6%, because there will always be some sectors like the finance sector where financial services firms are less jobs intensive than manufacturing firms. And if you in fact set that kind of goal, who should set the goal? What's the economic basis for determining that goal? Once the goal is set, what are the underlying initiatives, some of which might be in the Ministry of Skills Development, some of which might be in a whole bunch of other ministries, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Roadways. All of them have job-creating opportunities and initiatives. And when you put it all together, if there is no ability to coordinate and sort of connect the dots between what the different ministries are doing, what the PSUs are doing, what private sector is doing, and some kind of plan, you will never achieve the plan. So the jobs advisor would have 3 responsibilities. The first is creating overall master plan for jobs growth, pretty much the way that Niti Aayog creates a economic development plan. The second would be to actually identify specific initiatives, regardless of which ministries or PSUs they're in, which more or less add up to that kind of plan, so at least there's some way to connect the dots. And then the third, and perhaps most important, is to really coordinate what's happening between the cabinet ministries and the state governments, because so much of the job creation will happen in the states. So just this whole process of integrating across so many different planning units, so many different decision-making units, so many different initiatives. Of course, it's the Prime Minister's call, but...
so did he say that this sounds like a good plan or not?
He, without trying in any way to preempt what the Prime Minister thinks, I would say signals were encouraging.
Signals were encouraging. Mr. Parrikar, you know, you're probably much more adept at picking up the signals that come in from the Prime Minister's office than any of us here in this room. But let me ask you, sir, and this is an important point that Mr. Wadhwani here is making, that while each individual ministry will outline what their outcomes should be and so on and so forth, the emphasis so far has been on skills and the skills mission as far as the government is concerned. But should we not look at it more comprehensively and also look at a jobs plan which hasn't really been put together at this point in time, nor has it been articulated? We have a vague number in terms of what we would like to achieve, but we actually haven't seen a plan being put together.
Articulation may be lacking, but we have a plan.
Okay.
Now, job advisor is a different issue altogether. Basically, anything to happen, there are 2 aspects of it. One is vision. And I think we didn't have a Prime Minister with such fantastic vision. He has thought of even the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan can create jobs. One, for those who collect garbage, segregate them. For those who treat it, that is one. But the more important part, if you have a clean and Swachh Bharat, as he has in mind, you improve on health services, your health condition improve. Medical tourism for foreigners, India can be much more attractive place to come, because the worry is always post-operation care in India.
But we need civic bodies who actually pay salaries, sir.
I'll put it more clearly. One of the reasons probably the Swachh Bharat from civic bodies does not take off is garbage has lot of money in it. And it is one area where controller auditor probably doesn't want to go because it stinks. But it actually stinks both ways. The maximum corruption you will find in garbage.
Okay. All right. So the Swachh Bharat could also be an interesting employment generator. But Mr. Wadhwani, at this point in time, with the challenges, with the advent of technology, with the challenges of automation in the workplace, even Make in India were to be a grand success, we still would not be able to create the kind of numbers that we need to create even within the manufacturing space. What are the challenges that can be sort of overcome there, and especially when we're talking about high-skilled jobs, the challenges of automation and the challenges of the advent of technology in the manufacturing space specifically?
So, it's an incredibly complex issue, and because it's a very complex issue, it also has very complex answers. But if I was to oversimplify it a little bit, we have to segment the problem into a number of parts and then address each of them separately. And as Minister Parrikar just said, the Prime Minister does have an extraordinary vision. He's established several initiatives that are job creating. Swachh Bharat was one example that Minister Parrikar talked about, but Make in India is all about job creation. Startup India is about job creation. Skill India is about job creation. But they create jobs in different ways, at different levels of skilling capability. So, if you start with the notion that we have to create 50 million incremental jobs over and above the current job creation rate over the next 10 years, you start with sources of job creation and then you look at sources of job fulfillment, because Minister Parrikar is correct that even if there was a job open, but you didn't have a skilled person to fill it, what's the point, right?